Today in Crazed Performance Repair, we're going to go ahead and talk about replacing the seals in a hydraulic cylinder. In this case, a Bobcat 630. This is a really old unit, 80s unit. I just bought the thing. I've had to put a bunch of work into it. Every time I turn around, I'm blowing out a seal, or in this case, I blew out the hoses. But this set of seals, I have not replaced yet. So I want to go through and show you guys how to replace a seal in a hydraulic cylinder. You should have the proper tools, which I don't because I never ordered them, and they're not going to make it here today, so I'm just going to do it with some basic hand tools. There should be a spanner wrench that you take this apart with, but I'm going to show you how to do it the simple way. There's a couple different options for taking this off, so let's go ahead and get to it. So the first thing you obviously need to do is remove the cylinder from the vehicle or equipment or whatever. This particular one, I already have the pin out here, but it's very simple in this one. It's a bolt here. It takes 9/16 wrench and socket or 2 wrenches, whatever you want. Take the bolt out, slide the pin out. You're going to have to support, on a Bobcat scenario, this arm. In order to support this arm, you want to make sure you do not use the bucket to hold the arm up. The back of this thing will go like this. It will tip. Instead, you need to brace the arm somehow. So let's go see what I did. So I lifted the arm up with the vehicle's or equipment's hydraulics. They still work. The seals just leaked, or in my case, hoses. I have replaced this one, but since I replaced this one, this is the side I chose to put my blocking on. Now, I raised it up. I used the bucket to support it only until I could put this here. Then I removed the weight from the bucket, so the bucket is just barely floating above the ground right now. And the reason we do that is, again, so that it doesn't tip and collapse everything as soon as you pull the hydraulic cylinder off the other side. So now, typically, what you would do is put the spanner wrench between these two things here. Why am I doing it with this still attached? The reason I'm doing it attached is because this pin here is going to allow me to reef on this thing without it coming loose. So I'm actually going to go ahead and try and use this. Theoretically, I should be able to get it with this. It looks like somebody did it with this before. Hopefully, it'll come loose. And it did, so we are good to go on that regard. So all I have to do, this thing just unthreads like any normal bolt nut or what have you. Now in most circumstances you would want some kind of oil pan or something down here because this thing is going to leak like crazy as soon as you pull it off. This one, however, I had the ram off completely, and I took and I plunged it back and forth with the hoses going into a bucket. So I should not have much hydraulic fluid in here at all. Okay, there's a little bit, not much. I'll go ahead and throw a rag over here. Oh, the seal. There's a seal support here. That was actually rolled over as soon as I pulled it out. I must have caught the threads a little bit. Not a big deal, we're pulling it out anyway. Actually, one thing I do recommend before pulling it completely out is taking and throwing a support block under here. On this particular scenario, it will keep this slightly unlevel and keep some of the fluid in the back, so the back half of the fluid. Now, if you still have everything hooked up, in order to do this, you may have to apply the hydraulic pedal. This is a mechanical version in this case, so you can just mechanically actuate the pedal in the way that would make this thing normally extend. By doing that, it opens up the valve and allows you to pull this thing out. Otherwise, you'll never get it out without cracking a line free. And I should have used an oil pan anyway. I thought I drained it all out. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, right? Good thing I'm on gravel. Wow, I still don't have enough clearance for this ram in this thing. What happens if you don't give it enough lift on this side of it? So you do want to have this up a little bit higher. In this case, I didn't quite get the ram out. The last time I did it, I had it up higher, so it never even crossed my mind. But when this situation happens, you're going to need something like a bottle jack. In my case, I have this toe jack here. I'm going to go ahead and slide it underneath the arm right here. And since it's a toe jack, I want to make sure that the toe part doesn't end up under here. I had that happen once before. Hopefully this gives me enough room so that I can go ahead and remove the part of the cylinder I want. There it is. Now, lucky for us, when we're doing these cylinders, none of the seals are actually on the outside part of the cylinder. So this is the only part of the cylinder that you actually need. So let's go ahead and take this inside and get it fixed. So of course you're going to want to make sure you have a proper seal kit for your application. I do have one here because I bought all the seals while I was buying them. I figured I might as well. I know I'm going to need them. Now I do notice something on this cylinder. Somebody has been in this one before. It's probably why this one didn't leak yet. They replaced seals on here and they did a little damage to it. So there's a little bit of a ding right there. Somebody had damaged this one. Oh, they were hammering it to get it off. I'm going to show you a trick so you don't have to hammer it to get it off. Only if you have this little slider right here. You can treat it like a slide hammer. So let's go ahead, take this nut off, which somebody took off with the incorrect socket size, I can see, because the corners are all beat up. Either that or they did a 12-point socket. I happen to have the correct socket here because I already did a cylinder. Now you might want to hold the bottom in a vise or something. I used this rebar on my concrete work here last time, and I'm going to have to do it this time too. It's a little too tight. So, to give you an idea of what I've done, I've slid it over the rebar. Now I have a nice solid thing to hang on to the other end of the ram here. Now the nut comes off nice and easy. Now we're going to take this guy here. The O-ring's actually installed on this one. There is an O-ring on these if they're done right. Oh, it's still hiding off. Here we go. This one is being extremely stubborn. So, I'm going to use a wood block and a hammer. And instead of like they did where they hit the metal directly, I'm going to use the wood block to protect the thing a little bit. Make sure that you do not hit the shaft here. You do not want to damage that. It will always leak if you do. Boy, somebody really messed this up. Holy crap. I'm going to have to take a file to this one. Not normal procedure. See all this metal? That's aluminum from the inside of this guy here. That's going to struggle to seal in that O-ring. I'm going to have to clean that up a little bit with a hone. Probably use one of my ball hones here. Wow, okay. So, aside from the damaged portion, now that that is off, we know which direction this thing goes on there. We just have to remember that this surface is not clean. I will be cleaning each part prior to putting it back on, but we can go ahead and take off this section now. So, there we have it. Now, keep everything in order. This guy, I know, goes on separately. Alright, once you get to this point, you have to pull all the seals off. You need to remember what position they were all in, if you can tell still. Some of them you won't know, and you'll have to figure it out. I'll show you how to justify that. Okay, so this is a pressure ring or spacer ring or whatever the heck you want to call it. I forget the actual term for that. But regardless, this goes behind the O-ring from the pressure side. So we know how that goes. This guy here is a dust seal, and its sole purpose is just to keep the dust from getting to the good seal. So we're going to go ahead and pull that guy out. This one's actually in decent shape. This cylinder probably would have been alright, but I'm replacing it anyway. Now when you're doing this, you want to try to be careful, if you're using a pick like I am, not to damage the inside of the bore of this thing. So I peeled it up a little bit, like that, and then I stuck a second pick underneath it. That way I can continue peeling it up without using the pick portion of it. So I'll put the pointy end out, go ahead and collapse that sucker, and then I should be able to push it out with my thumb. Now, if yours is really bad like my other ones were, they're very brittle, it'll just shatter while you're trying to do that. It'll be quite tough to do, but it will shatter. Now before you even touch the new seals, make sure you clean everything off really good. I'm going to go ahead and spray some brake clean on here and clean it off as best I can. Now if all your seals are actually in place, you will have one more seal that I did not have right here. It's a O-ring just to keep the dirt and debris from wrecking these threads, from any kind of corrosion happening. I did not have that, so I did not pull it off on video, of course. Now we have a few different types of seals. This is for the hydraulic ram. This is kind of a square seal here. It could be a different color. In my case, it's just a kind of a brownish orangish color. We have these cup seals. These guys are going to be for the hydraulic ram itself. The one with the spring, or not the ram, but the, where is it? The collar here. So the one with the spring goes on the inside of that collar, and the pressure goes towards the spring. So you want the spring facing the inside of the cylinder. This guy here is a dust seal. It looks kind of like a cup seal, but it's a dust seal only. The more flat side goes towards the inside of the cylinder, and this side goes towards the outside. We have, there's that deal for the O-ring that I was telling you about. Now this guy is going to go on here first before I put the O-ring on. Slide it towards the back. Then we need to find our appropriate sized O-ring. It's going to be that guy there. Fits on there like that. Now this larger O-ring, that guy is the one that goes all the way to the back there. And that is the one that I did not pull off. This guy here is for inside of this portion. That goes on the shaft itself. I will save that for a little bit here before I do it. We're going to go ahead and pull this seal off of the shaft. Now, if you want to do things as quick as possible, I recommend doing this seal first, because this one, once you stretch it out, it takes a little bit for it to go back to its proper size. And there's actually 2 seals in this area. So you have this square seal, which is getting replaced by this brown one here. But underneath that, do not forget, there's a O-ring under there. So pull that O-ring out of there first. And that is this O-ring here. So we'll go ahead and throw that O-ring on. Then we throw this seal on. This one's kind of tough. It's a little bit stiff. But if you start it in, don't do what I do and drop the darn thing, because now I have to clean it all off again. Okay, I'm back. Got everything cleaned off. So this guy here, don't drop it this time. We're going to throw it like this, right? It'll start to press in there. You're going to want to hold that side of it. Then you can bring it around on the other side. You're going to slowly stretch it. It's very tough to do, but if you take your time, today's not my day. I'm trying to hold it out in front of you guys. Normally I'd tuck it up against me and kind of do that. It's much easier if you have something to brace against. Okay, this time it didn't get near as dirty. Probably because I brake cleaned it. Okay. Alright, try again. Once you get it kind of started, see I have it around that first lip there. Then I have it around this area. You don't want to let it sit too long, but I'm going to for camera sake, and I'll just have to let it sit and shrink down for longer. The faster you can do this, the quicker it'll go back down. But I can slowly work this around until I get it all the way over there, and then you make sure that it does not have any twist in it. That's very critical. If you have any twist in it, you either ruined it or you got to get the twist out. Okay, now it is definitely a bit on the big side. You guys can't really see that, I don't think, but it is on the big side. That guy I'm just going to let sit now. Remember, this one I have to ball hone this inside yet, so at least I think I do. Oh yeah, it's got a nasty spot. So I gotta hone that just real lightly. You don't want to do too much because then it won't be a tight fit anymore. But this one's too tight, so I have to do something. Now, this guy here, this is a real bastard to get in. Especially if you try and do it like you would normally apply a seal. So normally I would try and go from this direction to push it in. But if you do that, you're fighting this lip here, and you have the chance to tear it. If you go this direction, so you're putting the back in first, you have a better chance of getting that in there. So I'm going to pull it all the way through. It's a longer distance, but it will make it easier in the end. At least I feel it does. So I'm going to grab it like this. I'm going to pull it like this, right? Just pull it right through. I'm going to go until I get just about to the, or just past the sealing surface. Then I'm going to push it into the corner, push down on here, and I have to kind of, I can't really show you this on camera. It's very difficult. I have to kind of push it into the deal a little bit, really tough. And then I can start pushing this side here. Now, as it goes in, you kind of got to keep working it. It's very hard to explain how I'm doing this, but I'm basically collapsing the seal. There, you can see how it's sitting in there all kittywampus and goofy. I'm basically collapsing the seal. It's extremely tough to get in there, but once you do, it'll just kind of fall into place. I got one spot that's rolled back here. That's not the way I want it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and push back on that. Oh, there it is. Snapped right into place. So that is a very tough seal, but it's more flexible than it feels and looks. So there's that guy. Now we got to put this dude in. This dude here slips in rather easy, actually. So push it in like that. Then I'm going to go ahead and collapse this, right? So I'm going to I'm trying to do it so I can show you, but this is really tough to show you. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm pushing in it so it does like that, and then it falls back into place. So it'll kind of create that kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to be able to show you how I'm doing it. I'm going to try. We're going to try. All right. I'm going to hold down like this. There it is. Snapped into place. That guy's good. Now, before you put this back on the shaft, we're going to want to lube these seals with the hydraulic oil. So I got a bunch of hydraulic oil on my finger here. I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in here. We're going to make sure we get it on the seals and on the inside part of the metal. So we got that on there. Now this is the first piece that goes back on the shaft. I'm going to go ahead and put this on right away before I get a chance to get any of the inside of that dirty. So it slides on rather easy. There's a nice taper right here. I'm not going to push it down all the way. The reason being is because of the paint and stuff down here. I don't want to wreck the dust seal any more than I have to. Although, with use on this unit, it will get destroyed anyway, but besides the point, I guess. We're going to go ahead and clean this guy off. We might as well throw it in place. And then the O-ring right here, we need to pull this O-ring off. If you squeeze and slide, you can get the O-ring to pop up, peel it off. It'll come off rather easy. Throw a new O-ring on there. There we have it. Then of course, we would normally just slide this on. I gotta clean this up. And many times they will send a new nut. Now, I have a self-locking nut on this one. The squeeze type where it actually pinches the threads. This is a Loctited nut. Your choice, totally up to you whether you want to put this on or not. I'm probably going to reuse this one, but before I do, I'm going to go ahead, clean it up, and I'm going to look at the thread condition. The only shiny part on the threads on this one is a little bit where it tightens down, and then of course where the crimp part is to create the locking portion of it, but that's actually in really good shape yet, so I will reuse this one rather than go to this one. But basically, at this point, assemble it back together just like you took it apart. You're good to go. The only thing is, I wanted to make sure everybody could see what seals were what, how they go. When you do go to slide this piston part of it in, you got to be a little careful. Take your time, and of course, make sure you put a little bit of lube around the seal here. You always want to make sure you put lube on the seals before you try and install them, or you could possibly damage or scratch them. Or worse yet, you could maybe scratch the shaft here. The last thing you want to do is put a scratch in this guy. You put a scratch or dent in here, it's going to leak every time it hits that scratch or dent. So be very careful with that part of it. Good luck. Hopefully your seal install goes as good as mine.